I wasn't security, and I wasn't janitorial. I fixed things. For about 2 years, I worked as a night maintenance technician at a large indoor shopping center in Manchester. My shift usually started after closing, once the cleaning crews had moved through and most of the lights were dimmed. I handled electrical faults, stuck escalators, leaking pipes, broken ceiling fixtures, anything that needed fixing without customers around. Most nights were predictable. Quiet corridors, humming ventilation systems, and the occasional call to reset a tripped breaker somewhere. There was only one section of the mall I rarely had to deal with. The old Anchor store. It used to be a large department store at the far end of the center. For floors, big glass entrance, wide interior layout. It closed suddenly a year before I started working there. No major announcement. No renovation signs, just metal shutters pulled down and lights turned off. Management said the space was waiting for redevelopment, but nothing ever seemed to happen. From the outside, it just looked like a giant sealed storefront at the end of a long corridor. Inside, though, the power was still connected to part of the building. That meant if something electrical went wrong, someone still had to check it. Usually that someone was me. It was about 1:40 a.m. when I got the first maintenance request tied to that store. One of the corridor lights outside the shutter had started flickering, and security wanted it fixed before morning. I grabbed my toolkit and walked down the nearly empty wing. That corridor always felt slightly colder than the rest of the building. Probably just because it was wider and less insulated, but it always stood out. When I reached the old store entrance, I noticed something odd. Light was visible under the shutter. Not bright, just a faint glow from inside. That didn't make sense. According to the building plans, the interior lighting circuits had been shut down months earlier. I assumed maybe a breaker had been reconnected accidentally. It wouldn't be the first time paperwork didn't match reality. Still, I knocked on the shutter out of habit. No response. I used the service key to open the side maintenance door instead of lifting the main shutter. The interior smelled stale, like a space that hadn't been aired out in a long time. Emergency lighting was on in parts of the building, casting dim patches across the empty sales floor. Most shelves were gone, but some display stands still sat in place, covered in dust. The glow I'd seen from outside was coming from a set of ceiling lights toward the back of the floor. I walked across slowly, checking for signs of recent work or wiring changes. That's when I heard footsteps, not echoing from outside, from somewhere deeper inside the store. They weren't loud, just slow, measured steps, the kind you hear in large empty rooms where every movement carries. I stopped walking and listened. Nothing. I told myself it was probably just the building settling, ventilation ducts expanding, maybe something falling over. Still, I finished checking the lighting circuit faster than usual and left. I didn't mention the sound. At the time, it didn't seem worth logging. A week later, I got another call for the same location. This time, it wasn't a flickering light. It was a motion sensor alert. Security said the alarm system inside the closed store had triggered briefly, then reset itself. They wanted maintenance to check the wiring before morning. I walked back down the same corridor. The shutter looked exactly the same, but this time, I noticed something else. Dust on the floor in front of the service door had been disturbed. Not completely wiped away, just broken by a few faint footprints. They weren't clear enough to see details, but they were definitely newer than the surrounding dust. I opened the door again. The emergency lights inside were still on, but now I could hear something else. A faint scraping sound from above. The store had an upper level connected by escalators and a maintenance stairwell. I climbed the stairs slowly, expecting maybe a loose panel or something shifting. When I reached the top, the sound stopped. The upper floor was empty, completely still. Rows of empty racks stretched into shadow, lit only by scattered emergency fixtures. I checked the alarm panel near the back wall. No faults showing. But as I turned to leave, I noticed something on the floor near the escalator. Fresh footprints, leading from the escalator toward the center of the floor, and stopping, as if whoever made them had just stopped walking. I reported the footprints that time. Management said they'd send security to review the camera feeds inside the store. 2 nights later, I was called back again. This time security said the interior cameras hadn't recorded anything unusual, but one of the lights inside the store had turned on again. When I walked down the corridor, I already knew what I'd see, that faint glow under the shutter. I went in through the service door again. The store felt colder than before. Not freezing, just noticeably colder than the hallway. The ceiling lights toward the back were on again. I walked toward them. Halfway across the floor, I heard the footsteps again. This time, they didn't stop when I did. They kept moving. Slow, measured. Somewhere ahead of me. I didn't call out. I just followed the sound. The steps seemed to lead toward the escalator. When I reached it, I saw something that made me stop completely. The escalator was moving. Not fast, just slowly running upward. That shouldn't have been possible. The system was supposed to be powered down overnight unless maintenance activated it manually. I checked the control panel beside it. The switch was still in the off position, but the steps kept moving, slowly carrying nothing upward into the dark second floor. I followed the escalator up. At the top, the lights were on in a narrow strip across the floor, just enough to see the center aisle. And standing there about 20 feet away was a man. He wasn't facing me. He was looking out across the empty floor. He was dressed like someone who worked there once. Dark trousers, white shirt, sleeves rolled up. He didn't move, didn't react to the sound of the escalator. For a few seconds, I just stood there trying to process what I was looking at. Then the lights flickered. When they stabilized, the floor was empty. No man, no movement, nothing. I reported everything that night, the lights, the escalator, the figure. Management didn't argue with me. They just logged it and said they'd investigate. A week later, the maintenance access to that store was restricted. The service door was locked permanently. Power to the interior lighting was disconnected completely. No explanation was given. I still work maintenance, just at a different site now. But sometimes I think about that store. About the way the escalator moved even though it was switched off. About the footprints that stopped in the middle of the floor. And about that man standing there like he was still on shift. Like the store had never closed for him. Do you think someone was actually getting inside that store? Or was something still there that never realized it had shut down? Let us know in the comments. And if this story unsettled you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more true horror cases that will leave you speechless.